Hey folks, welcome back, It's my top 75 list of all time. So the 75 games that I like the most at this moment in time. Now these are games that I played, of course, so there might be games that you will not find on this list because I just didn't play them, and they might be awesome games. There are some still waiting to be played, honestly, so that's, well, games that might come into this list and probably next year. So, without further ado, let's get started because we have 10 games to do this time. Last time I did only 5, from 75 to 71. Now we're going from 70 to 61. And we start with a game. Oops, let's take the right paper. The game that is new. A new game. New in the list, of course, because it's a game from 2016. And it's a game published by Stronghold Game. Designed by Friedman Freeze, which is not a designer that I tend to really like. There are only a few games that I actually like. It is at this moment number 1168 on Board Game Geek, but this will rise, of course. And it's a game for 2 to 5 players, and it's called Fabled Fruit. So in this game, it's a legacy. A fable game. Now, it's a very loose term. Now, they want to advertise this as a new kind of game. It's a little bit legacy-like, but without destroying games. You can play it several games, and each game that you play changes. And that's true. So, in this game, the theme is very simple. You have all these animals. You as well are an animal. Well, your pawn is an animal. And you are trying to make juices, fruit juices. So, first of all, you have to collect fruit. So this is a set collection game, hand management, and you're trying to make juices with those cards in your hand, the fruits. And you have some locations on the board which are other animals. And if you go to a certain animal, you activate it, and this might do anything. So you might be able to exchange some cards with the market. You might steal cards from another player. You might do a push your luck where you have to draw cards from the draw pile. And if you have one of a certain type, you can keep going. But as soon as you have 2 of the same, you lose everything. You drown. So that's pretty cool. And I haven't gone through all of it, so there are probably more and more interesting cards in this. So, and that's what makes this game cool. You can keep on playing. You can save the game when you want after one game or after a few games. Each time you win, you get points. If you didn't lose, you get a point, and well, if you lost the game, you get no points, but you can keep track of points if you play it with the same group each time, and that way you get through all of the different cards. There are many cards, many locations that are added to this list. They will disappear because you take cards when you make a juice, and then if a pile runs out, you get a new pile, or you might get a new one in between. It's hard to explain this way, but anyway, very cool. The artwork is cute, the theme is cute, not too special, but the game is fun, and it gets better each time you play it because there are more things added, different things added each time you play it, and that's why it is my number 70, Fabled Fruit. Number 69. Number 69 is also a brand new game from 2016. You will see there are many more to come. People say it wasn't a great year, but it wasn't a bad year either. And this game is, well, it is published by a publisher that is doing very well in my book at this moment, and that's Renegade Games. It is designed by Kane Klenko. Also very interesting, this guy. He did some other game that's on the list, maybe. Spoiler. It is ranked 1955, so it gone a little bit under the radar, this game, but I still like it very much. It's a 2 to 4 player game, and it's called Covert. In Covert, you are trying to score the most points, and you do that by going on missions, by fulfilling missions. And for missions, you need, to be on certain places, because you have this map in the game of Europe, and Russia is included, and so a map of Europe and with different cities, and you want to move your spies to different cities because you want to do missions there, and you need certain items to do those missions as well. So you have items, you have locations, and this you all do while doing a dice placement actions. So each player has a number of dice which they roll at the beginning of the round, and with those dice they can select different actions. And this gets kind of tinky because you have this round circular track with numbers 1 to 6, which have different actions. And if you put your die on the number 2 as the first one on a certain action, the next dice can only be a number 1 or a number 3, so it has to be adjacent. And that way you can block other players from doing certain actions, or you don't want them to block you, so you choose that action before, but you also want to take that one. There is this code cracking space on the board as well, where you want to buy a certain in a certain mechanic where you slide tokens or switch tokens, you want to get a certain number that are on these cards that you also want to score. Very cool, very thematic. I really like the theme of this game. It is a little bit tinky, and I only played with 2 players, so I haven't got the experience of playing with more players. It might be a little bit more downtime, although each player after each other plays 1 die. So it goes around pretty smooth in that object. So, Covert, one of the surprises for me. I really like the theme, I like the dice placement. That's something I really like in games, and I still think there's not enough games that use it, and that's why this game managed to be my number 69. Number 68 is the first game by Portal Game that makes the list. Now, I must admit there will be many games of Portal games on this list. That's also the reason why I do demos for them, and why I do even more for Portal games. And I was thinking maybe it's wrong to put him on the list, but that's not wrong in my opinion, because, well, that's what makes me attracted to Portal games, because I really, really like their games. Now, this first one, well, there are 2 iterations of this game. I've chosen the new one to put here because it adds a little bit more. And it's my number 68, well, published by Portal Games, designed by Christian Kurla. Great guy, by the way. It's number 1379 on Board Game Geek. And it is a 2-player game called Tides of Madness. Now, there's also Tides of Time, which is almost the same game. It uses different artwork, so it's a different theme, which is not important in this game. Maybe a little bit more in Tides of Madness. So what you're doing in this 2-player game is drafting, and, well, it's very special if you have a 2-player drafting game. So that means each player starts with 5 cards in their hand. They are going to choose one, place it in front of them, and give the other 4 to the other player. Both players reveal their 2 cards, well, the cards that they've chosen, and then they take the 4 cards that they got, choose one to keep, and give the other ones to the other player. And that goes on until each player has 5 cards lying in front of them. Now, these cards will score depending on certain symbols on them, on sets that you collect, maybe on different kind of things. And, well, that way you score points after a round. Now, after a round, you take back your 5 cards, you keep one. Well, you choose one to keep for the rest of the game, so each for the next of the 2 rounds, and one to remove from the game, so that doesn't come back anymore. And after that, you just take cards back to 5 cards in your hand, and you draft again. You do this after 3 rounds, you get a final score. That's Tides of Time. Now, Tides of Madness adds madness tokens. Some of these cards have tentacles on them. Now, when you are going to score a round, you're going to count how many tentacles you have in your tableau at that moment. The player with the most one gets 2 choices. Either he scores 4 points, or he gets to remove one of his madness tokens, because for each tentacle you get a madness token. Now, madness tokens aren't too bad unless you get too many of them. If you get too many madness tokens when scoring, well, you immediately lose the game. You go crazy, you go bananas, and you lose. And that's what makes this game much tinkier than its little brother, Tides of Time. I really like this game, a very quick 2-player game, and it's Tides of Madness, my number 68. On number 67, we have not a new game. Actually, this game has been on my list last year, and last year it was, get a hold of yourself, it was number 21. So it dropped 46 spaces. And I'm talking about the game by Platehead Games, designed by Jonathan Gilmore and Isaac Vega. It is number 11 on Board Game Geek, so people still love it very much. For me, it fell a little bit from the list. It is Dead of Winter. So my number 67. And so I guess I need to do some explanation why it dropped. First of all, the good things. I love the theme. It is zombies, yes, but it's not zombies. Actually, this is a Walking Dead game. You are these survivors in this community, in this colony, and you're trying to survive. You're trying to do missions because you have different scenarios that you want to complete. So the main goal is to, well, to complete the main mission. But you also have these cards that give you a personal mission, a personal goal that you want to reach at the end of the game, if you manage to do the complete mission. On top of that, you also might have a trader who has his own way to win the game, and he wants morale to drop to 0 and other players to lose the game. So that's very interesting, of course. You have the tension because you want to do your own mission, otherwise you don't even win. Even if you survive, you might want to, well, you might be the traitor. That adds a lot to the game. Or you might think there is a traitor, which adds a lot of tension. So that's cool. You have these different locations when you go to. There are zombies, but there are just a nuance. They are not that important in the game. They are important, of course, because they can kill you. And that's that. But what's a little bit less good about the game is it can take a while. The downtime is a little bit too much to my liking. And that means if it's your turn and you have a lot of survivors that you can use, you have more dice, and dice are used to do actions. And if you have a lot of actions, it might take a while to, well, you can have some AP, analysis paralysis, because there are quite a bit of options. And well, some players might have only 1 or 2 survivors left. They only have 3 actions, and well, their turn goes really fast, while other players take a longer time to do their actions. Now, you do have the crossroads system, which is pretty cool. And the crossroads system is that the player next to you, when it's your turn, he draws a card. And it has a text on it, which activates as soon as something happens. If a certain character is in play, if the player whose turn it is goes to a certain location or does a certain action, then it might trigger. Now, that's really cool. You stay in the game that way more, but the only thing is that these cards just don't trigger enough. Now, this sounds like a very negative review about the game, but I really like it. Only thing, the downtime is so hard that I barely play this game anymore, and that's sad, and it might drop even more later. We'll see. My gaming club has a new version, The Longest Night. It's a new edition. Other characters, other stories, stuff like that, which is also a standalone game. I'm curious about that one. Maybe that one flows a little bit more better. We'll see next year probably. So this is my number 67, Dead of Winter. My number 66 is a game for 2 players published by Queen Games, designed by a designer we already saw in this list, and that's Stefan Feld. Now, it is my number 66. Board Game Geek says, no, it's number 718, but it's new to my list. It's an older game, and I'm talking about Roma. Now, Roma, as I said, a 2-player game. It goes really fast. It can go very fast even. And in this game, it's a kind of hand management and dice action selection, because you have cards in your hand. Cards have a certain cost to put them into your tableau, and you have a different number of spaces in your tableau that you can use, and each is denoted by a die number. Now, if you have cards in play and you roll your dice, you can put the dice on the locations where that has that number, and that number might have a card next to it. It might not have a card yet or anymore. These cards can do anything. They can score you points, which might lead to the end of the game. It can destroy cards from the other player. It might switch cards from places. It might do anything. So you're trying to build an engine that works. You might want to target your opponent's most powerful cards and stuff like that. Really cool game. You can medicate the dice, of course, with certain things. It goes really fast. It has a really typical Stefan Feld dice placement feeling, a little bit like the Castle of Burgundy-ish feel. Plays really fast. In my book, it's an excellent 2-player game, and that is Roma. Now, there's also Roma 2, which adds new cards to it. You can play these both as a standalone game. You can mix, you can let one player play with a Roma 1 deck, the other one with a Roma 2 deck, or you can just mix all cards together and have a communal draw pile. you can choose how to play it. It is my number 66, so I really like this game. Number 65 is a game that I don't own. Now, I had it in my collection, not my collection, but I had it here for a long time, but now someone else is playing the game, and I'm talking about Time Stories. Now, Time Stories is a game by Space Cowboys, designed by Peggy Chassot. It might be, I write really bad if I do make this list, and Manuel Rozoy. It is for 2 to 4 players, and on Board Game Geek, it is very popular. It is number 26, so even higher than on my list. Now, this game is what you can call a kind of a legacy game. You don't destroy cards, but once you played it once, a campaign, a module, you cannot go back, or you have to forget everything you saw, because once you know how the story works, you cannot go back because there are no surprises anymore. Now, these games works, as I said, with different modules, and each module tells you a story. And these stories have very different themes. Now, the base is you are time travelers and you're trying to solve things in history, maybe in the future, who knows, and you go to these certain places each module. Now, you have one with an asylum, you have one that goes to a fantasy setting, you have now also one with pyramids, something in Antarctica and stuff like that. So you have many different kinds of things. And so far, I've played 3 of them and I really like the game. Now, 765, that means it could even be better. So why isn't it higher on the list? Well, I guess it might take a long time. Now, you can play this in several sessions if you want, and that's probably the way you want to play it, because after playing for 4 or 5 hours, your brain doesn't work anymore. So that's the problem for me, is again, it's hard to get the same people on at the table often enough to play this a lot. That's the only downside of this game. Besides that, the game is pretty cool. Sometimes it might feel a little bit dragged because you know what's happening and you lose. So you go back to the present, you change your tactics, you might change characters, and you go back in history or in time, and you start over again, finding out new things, but also with the knowledge of things that you already knew. But sometimes you have these dice rolls that you have to do, and that might be sometimes too random, when you can die because of a die roll, and then you have to come back and do it all over again while you know most parts of the route that you have to follow in the story. So that might be a little bit of a downside. Besides that, fantastic team, great gameplay, lovely artwork, and a very cool time with friends. So that's why it's still high on the list on number 65. That's Time Stories. Number 64 is not a new game this time. Yay! It is a game that has not been on the list, but very strangely enough, because I really like this game. Now, it doesn't get played that often. I don't know why. It's probably because of the components. Now, there is a new version of it. I have not seen it, so I hope those components are a little bit better. The rulebook might need some streamlining, so I hope they did that. But for me, it's still a cool game. It is number 64 for me. It is number 1093 on Board Game Geek. It is by Common Man Games, but yeah, Common Man Games. And it is designed by Ole Steines. Now, as you can see, there's lots of glare. And this is called Police Precinct. And why is it my number 64? Already because of the theme. I think this is a theme that needs to be used more. You are playing a police officer, and you're in this city in which there is way too much crime and accidents, by the way. If you're living there, just move. Just go away. You have thugs, you have gangs, you have murderers, you have kidnappings, burglaries, whatever. So it keeps on coming. But you are driving your police car or your undercover police car around the city, going to these different things that happened, while you are also trying to catch a murderer. And that's your timer. So the murderer is trying to escape. That's your timer, while you're trying to gather evidence throughout the city. Very easy, simple gameplay. You do some dice rolls to do the missions, to complete this burglary, or to stop the burglary, or to stop the kidnapping. You have cards that you can use to do special things, or that you can do to boost your actions and stuff like, or you boost your investigations. Really cool team. I really love it. And I hope someday I find the second edition and see how much it got improved. But this team is one that needs to be used more to be a police officer and solving crime, fighting crime and stuff like that. So this is the big reason why this is my number 64, the team, but it's also a very good game. Police Precinct. Number 63 is not a new game, but it's very new on the list because it has been new in my collection not that long ago. It is also a dice rolling game which uses a little bit of the Yahtzee mechanic, roll, lock dice, reroll and stuff like that. It has the Cthulhu theme, but it doesn't use the Cthulhu name, but it has tentacled stuff and so it's Cthulhu themed. It is by Pleasant Company Games, a game for 2 to 4 players. Here it is. It's designed by Simon McGregor. My number 63, but on Board Game Geek it's only ranked 1226. Now, in this game, each player has a role that you are playing, which are not that different from each other, to be honest. It's just the things you start with for the most part. And when it's your turn, you go to a location. There are 6 locations on the board, each with their monster or stuff to beat. Now, how to beat these things? Well, you do dice rolls, a little bit of Yahtzee style, but only you don't always have that many rerolls, because you have to use tokens to reroll. You have different tokens to focus, to buy stuff, and stuff like that. So if you go to a location, you get some more tokens, and then you can try to beat the challenge. You roll dice, you might reroll them and stuff. You might mitigate them with items that you bought earlier. And that way, if you roll the right things, you defeat it, you score points and bonuses for that. If you lose, you have to draw a token. Now, these tokens might have 0 to 3 tentacles on them, and they go to your stack as well. At the end of the game, each tentacle is worth minus points. And that way, at the end of the game, after you've done X number of challenges, of rounds, then you count up your points, and the player with the most points is the winner. This game is very fun, very tight as well. We have played some games, and they were all very close to see who was the winner. I really like this one, very exciting. The dice rolls, it's not that hard with the die rolls because you can mitigate them, so there is luck involved, but there are chances. You know how much chances you're willing to take, how much gamble you want to take by taking on bigger, harder enemies who score you bigger points, of course. My number 63, Ancient Terrible Things. My number 62 is a game that has been on my wishlist for a long time and I still don't have it. Why? Because it's quite expensive. Now you have cheap versions, but of course, if I'm going to buy one, I want a cool one, very good quality one, and that's why I actually still haven't bought one. Now I'm talking about Crokinole. Now Crokinole is a game that is probably the oldest one on this list. It's a game from 1867, designed by who knows? I am not sure. I think it's a Canadian game, but I have no idea. It's uncredited on Board Game Geek. It's a 2 to 4 player game, and well, actually on Board Game Geek it's rated pretty high, number 60. And mine is number 62, so we kind of agree. Now, Crokinole is a dexterity game, a disc flicking game. You have this round board where you have, well, these little sticks in the middle and a hole in the middle. And you just want to flick your disc in the hole, or as close to it as possible. Now, if there are already some discs on the board, you always have to hit another player's disc first. Now, other players, you can play as 2 players, or you can play this in teams of 2. So you still always have only 2 teams. And that way you are flicking away other players' disc, you're trying to get your disc into the holes, which score you more points, and at the end you just count up the points of your disc still on the board, and the disc you scored by putting him in the hole, and well, if you score the most points, you win the round. Or you count up the difference, and that's your point score. Depends on how you play it. Now, this is actually a very basic disc flicking game. Not that much to it. No theme at all, of course. There are some out the market at this moment. There is Catacombs, there is Flick 'em Up and stuff like that. Now, I like this more. So this is a spoiler. Those games that I just mentioned are not on the list. I found them a little bit convoluted. They go very slow, while this just puts you in the basic action of flicking those discs. You need skill, you definitely need focus. I did a how to play video, by the way, on how to play Crokinole on this channel, so if you're interested in this one, go check that out and you can see exactly how the game works. So that's my number 62, Crokinole. The last one for this list, number 61, is a game that had been on my wish list for a long time. I already had it last year. It was already on my list as well last year. Now, it was number 30 last year. Now it's 61, so it dropped 31 places. Mostly because there are so many other cool games that I got to play last year. Now, it is by designer Steve Finn and it's published by himself with Dr. Finn's Games. It is a 2 to 4 player game. I rated number 61. Board Game Geek rates it number 257, and it's Biblios. Biblios is this dice, well, no, not dice rolling. It's kind of a set collection game with bidding as well. Now, I don't like bidding normally. In this game, it works for me. So what happens is this game plays in 2 phases. The first phase, you are going to draft cards, and the way that works is very simple. The starting player, he will draw a card, and then he has a couple of choices. He can either say, I keep this one for myself. Now he can only choose to keep 1 card, and then he draws the next one. So he might draw a better one, but he cannot take it anymore. He could also give it, well, place it in the middle of the table for the other players to get later, or he can put it aside in another stack face down, and that's the stack that you're going to use in phase 2. So each player gets 1 card that he has chosen, or to put in the middle of the table or for himself, and then play goes around each time with a new starting player until all cards have been drafted. So you have this big pile, you have this stack of cards that are going to use in the next phase. Next phase, you have these cards in your hand, which you collected through the first phase, and you're going to use those cards to buy other cards that you're going to get. So each time, player is going to reveal a new card from this deck that has been put aside, and then people are going to bid with them with the cards in their hand. Now you have coins in your hand, and you also have numbered cards, colored cards, well, that you use in the set collection. You can manage also dice that are on a little tableau, and these dice will represent how many points the person will get that has a majority of a certain color. And you can use cards that you will draw, well, a bit for, to manipulate those dice, so the points that you will get, or other players. Very cool, very interesting game, plays pretty fast, in about 30 minutes, it's tinky, and this goes so fast that the bidding for me is not a problem, and that's very special, and that's why it deserves my number 61 spot, and that's Biblios. And that's it for this part of my top 75. So already 15 games done, 60 more to go, and next time you will see the games 60 to 51. Now, very cool, very interesting. And let's see, and I'm going to see if what the most interesting things are. To spoil a little bit, next round there will be a lot of old classics for me. So many that have been on the list already. That's interesting. Not too many new ones next time. So if you're interested in watching that, feel free to come back later. If you want to know when it comes online, of course, push the button to subscribe. If you like this channel or this video, give it a thumbs up as well. If you want to talk about the games I mentioned, put them in the comments. I'm always happy to talk about them. And remember, after we do our top 75, there will be a live episode of All Aboard where we can discuss the choices I made and probably also the choices I didn't make. So thanks for watching this part. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you all later. I see you all in the future. Bye bye.